He was a superstar. From the moment he could walk, all he wanted to do was play football. And I never sat down for 16 years. All I did was play football with him. And he just loved life completely. He was into it, everything you can think of. Climbing, running, mountain biking, football. He just loved life. And unfortunately, it got took away from it.
I was at headquarters working later on another case when I heard a report that a pedestrian had been struck on Kingsland Grange in Warrington. I knew that Sam had been taken off to hospital, and I knew that the driver of an Audi S3 had said that he'd been driving his vehicle and he thinks he'd hit Sam. As more and more information came out, it became apparent that what people were saying was that the driver of the Audi had been going at a ridiculously high speed. Mason Hodgson was the driver of the Audi. He was arrested. Throughout the investigation, we found that dozens of people had arrived in their own cars, and there was a handful of people who decided that they were going to take to what they called the strip to go as fast as they possibly could. Now this is a 30-mile-an-hour zone in an industrial estate, and we could see from our CCTV that people were going about their daily business. They were going to and from work. There were HGVs driving into the industrial estate. One end of the strip was somebody holding a torch that shone red and then green, and then from there people were just accelerating. Some people were just accelerating as hard as they could down the strip, which doesn't take a great deal of skill. What takes the skill is showing the restraint to do 30 miles an hour in a 30 zone, not what we ended up with, which was Mason Hodgson reaching speeds that weren't far off 100 miles an hour. People filming with their own cameras, looking at the crowds, looking at the cars that were up and down, and then the footage of Mason Hodgson at horrific speeds, and Sam walked out from the crowd to cross over the road. You actually see on the footage, as you look up Kingsland Grange, from the direction that Mason Hodgson came from, the road was clear.
I was watching the golf, it was US Masters, and I'd gone into the kitchen to get a brew, and then I turned around and I could see a flashlight, and I thought it was the milkman, because the milkman has it. Anyway, there was a knock on the door, I opened the door, and there was a police officer there, and I just knew straight away. And he just said, you know, were you the parent of Sam Harding? And yeah. He said, he's been in an accident. We need to get you to Warrington as fast as we can. As soon as he said that, Liz came down the stairs and she was like hysterical, and then next minute we were in the car, and it was, although I think it took us 25-30 minutes to get there to Warrington, you know, the lights flashing and stuff, but it felt like it was forever. The impact's been horrendous. Our world's ended. The normality of it just totally changed overnight. What's frustrating for me is if Sam had walked out a second later, he would have been 50 yards down the road because he was going that fast. So, life's about choices, isn't it? He chose to do that, and there were other cars were involved, it was just him on his own. Think about what you're doing before you do it, because, you know, at the end of the day, this lad who killed Sam, he knew exactly what he was going to be doing, because he drove there to do it. So he was a ticking time bomb. And unfortunately, time ran out, and it happened to be my lad who got it. .95 witnesses in total were identified
probably a third were entered as evidence. Then were supplemented with hundreds and hundreds of hours of CCTV footage, a lot of it that had been gathered by the major investigation team detectives. And then one officer had the task of reviewing all of that footage to see if they could find Mason Hodgson's car, to see what we could piece together, and from that a compilation of video footage was put. We sent this off to CCTV experts who provided speeds for 3 parts of ultimately the last run that the Mason Hodgson did, and that put his speed in excess of 90, then in excess of 80, and then ultimately in excess of, I think, about 85 miles an hour on the final run just before he collided with Sam. Our forensic collision investigators, they got to the scene, they did what they do, they secure evidence, they survey the scene, they look at the scientific data, and they were able to say that Mason Hodgson collided with Sam in excess of 50 miles an hour. Now that's under heavy braking. He was travelling a lot faster than that prior to colliding with Sam. But ultimately, as a driver, it's your job, your only job, to drive safe, to preempt that where there's a crowd of people, where there's children, where there's vulnerable people, one might step out. And I'm not saying that you're going to avoid every single collision, but by sticking to the speed limit, the level of injury is going to be drastically reduced compared to if you're exceeding the speed limit.
Obviously we're so proud of Sam, but the proudest moment I think was at his funeral, because we were expecting maybe 100, maybe 150 people turn up, but there was 500, maybe more. Mainly all his mates, and people he knew, kids, and they all had football shirts on. Even the vicar had a football shirt on. And it was that's just a testimony to who he was.